Great. Okay. Welcome everybody to the schools forum. I trust everybody's got the agenda and the papers which came out separately and also attached to the invitation. So thank you very much for that, Lauren. I think we will do very quickly hello from everybody. If you just say who you are and where you represent, and in doing that, I'm going to also just welcome Guy Marshall, who's joined us as the finance business partner head. How to call that terminology right? So we'll go very quickly, and I'm going around my screen. So Steve Goodwin.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Goodwin. I'm Finance Manager for Bristol City Council.
Guy Marshall.
Good evening everyone, I'm Guy Marshall. I'm the Finance Business Partner for Bristol City Council, replacing Travis Young, who was in the role previously.
And Lauren, can we just record in the minutes, thanks to Travis for the support he's given us over recent times. Merch Clark.
Hello, I represent the primary maintained governors.
Thank you. Cameron Shaw.
Hi everyone, Cameron Shaw, Executive Principal and Canterbury Federation, represents secondary academies.
Thank you. Alistair Brown. On mute, Alistair. Alistair, you're on mute.
My apologies. Hi, Alistair Brown, representing Bristol's maintained nursery schools.
Thank you. Sarah L.
Hi everyone. I'm Sarah Lovell. I'm COO at the Cabot Learning Federation, representing secondary academies.
Thank you. Lee Hannon.
Hello, Lee Hannon, here representing maintained primary settings.
Lee. Sue Coombs.
Thanks, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sue Coombs, Head of Service for School Partnerships, Bristol City Council.
Yeah. Levi.
Hello, everyone. Levi Mopstone, Group Accountant for Bristol City Council.
Thank you. Mary.
Afternoon, all. I'm Mary Cox, representing Clifton Diocese.
Mary. Mandy C.
Hi everybody, Mandy Cheshire, Business Manager and Governor at St Bede's Catholic College, representing Academy Governors.
Thank you. Esther M.
Hello, Esther Messenger, Cathedral Schools Trust, representing Academy Primary.
Thank you. Nick B.
Afternoon, Vic Firmer, Director of Education for Bristol City Council.
Kate Peel.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm representing maintained nursery schools.
Kate. Nick Bailey.
Evening, folks. I'm Nick. I'm head teacher at Brunel Field Primary School, which is local authority maintained.
Thank you. Louise M.
Hi everybody, apologies for being late. I'm Louise Malek. I'm Chief Financial and Operational Officer for the Lighthouse Schools Partnership, and I'm representing Academy Primary Schools. Thank you.
Louise. Simon A.
Hi, good evening everyone. Simon Eakins, Finance Director at Cathedral Schools Trust, representing Academy Primaries.
Thank you. Christine T.
Hi, I'm the Executive Member for Children Services and Education at the Council.
Thank you, Christine. Melanie B. Can't hear you, Melanie.
I think she's having mic issues, so.
Okay. All right. Okay. And I think we've got Nicole Dayton. She's got mic and phone issues, but she's special school maintained. So I think, Lauren, that's everybody. I assume we're caught, are we?
We are indeed. I confirm we're correct.
Okay. All right. So welcome everybody. It's good to see so many faces. And we'll move on, I think, to the forum standing business. So, Lauren, any apologies for absence?
Yeah, I've got an apology from Aileen Morrison, Joe Willis, Lorraine Gaskill, who's a trade union rep. I think she swapped with someone else. Yeah, that's it. So far.
Okay, thank you. We are corporate. Do we have any new members or resignations?
We do. We have, well, we don't have a new member, but Melanie Bunce has changed roles and she's now the rep for Maintain Secondary Head Teachers. Nick Bailey has joined representing the Maintain Primary Schools. And there is a new officer, as we alluded to earlier. Guy Marshall will be replacing Travis Young for finance. I don't know if you want to go into that, but that's what we have so far.
Okay, all right. So welcome back, I think. Yeah. Any notification of vacancies?
We have 2 primary governors for academy schools and 1 primary head teacher for Maintain schools. I'll get them sent out as usual.
Okay, thank you. And anybody got any changes or declarations of interests for today? I can just about see everybody on my screen, so during the meeting, either use an electronic hand or a virtual hand. Oh, I can see Simon's.
Yeah, it's not a declaration of interest. It's just your note about, or Lauren's note about Travis moving on. He's obviously tried for many years to sort of depart, and he's always been pulled back in. I just thought it'd be worth noting and thanking him for his sort of years of service to the sort of school's finances over the years.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah,
Noted,
thank you.
yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which were in the papers. So first of all, any material points on the minutes? No, that's great. Okay, so we're going to go through to the actions, and very helpfully, Lauren has created us a action tracker, which is also in the meeting.
Chair, can I just check that we're happy to resolve that the minutes of the last meeting were a correct record? Can I just check we're happy with that?
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's all right.
Okay. Yeah, fine. So we're on to the action tracker now. I know some of these are going to be discussed in the course of the meeting, and some of them were brought up separately. The first one, Vic, was around BHES charging policy.
Thank you, Steve. I'm happy to briefly update on that. So I wrote out to all schools in Bristol, would have been last week, to inform them that we've been having a number of conversations with the hospital education school. And I think in particular, we hugely value the work that they do, particularly in supporting our most vulnerable children, but we also recognise they're in a challenging financial position as well, with the rising need and rising costs of running hospital education. So working with Guy Marshall and Steve Goodwin in our finance department, what we have agreed to do is pause the charging policy that was put into place, would have been last financial year, so to take effect from the new financial year, so 25/6, whilst we work with them on the structure of their budget, whilst we also look at the inflationary costs that they've been experiencing as a school and their expenditure, but also while we then also have some conversations with the chairs of the primary and secondary heads forums and with those forums together to think about what should a charging policy in the future look like, what should it pay for, and how do we monitor that over time. So I've met with both the chairs of the primary and secondary heads forums. We've talked that through. They were very supportive of the approach and welcoming of the letter that we sent. And I think that gives us now some time as we work through the summer term and into the autumn to start thinking about what are the arrangements for, it would be 26/7 if I've got my financial years correct. So mostly positive feedback from schools as well. And it doesn't detract from the challenge that the hospital education school has, but I know Philippa, who's not working at the moment, she's just having a few days off, is really keen to work with us, and we've been there shoulder to shoulder with her on that piece of work. So more to do to get them to a position where they've got a structural balance in their budget. But I think we're moving in the right direction in that one now. And Steve, you'll know we've had conversations in this forum about hospital ed and the charging policy and some of the challenges around that. I think that's pretty clear. And pause, review and consultant position for 26/27. Any Sarah, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Vic, for that explanation. Just for clarification, can I check that so the 24/25 charging rates will stand? So we're talking about last financial year and this financial year will stay the same?
So it's a prospective, not a retrospective change. It's a prospective change for this financial year that's about to begin any day now. So 5/6. I made clear in the letter that policy change is a prospective change, not a retrospective change.
Okay, because I think there was some discussion at previous forum meetings about the changes that took place last April. So I'm just clarifying if that still stands, the charging rates, or...
So the policy has been in effect for much of the financial year that's ending now. And the changes I've made are about the 25/6 financial year going forwards, not looking back.
So I think there were some concerns about the rises this financial year as well. So that's worth considering. But okay, well, I'll take that away. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Sarah, there was a process. Schools Forum was involved in part of that process to begin a charging policy for the financial year that's ending. I'm not seeking to kind of affect that position and the charging policy that has been in place for that period. I'm more looking forward as to how can we change this and get the hospital education school in a better financial footing, both this year, but also, so financial year about to start, but also thinking about 26/7 when we get into next year as well. And that's the work Steve Goodwin and I are doing.
Okay, thank you. Next action was finance to bring an update on the DSG management planning to the next meeting as part of the update on the high needs block.
There's an item on the agenda for this evening for that, Chair. Just to say as well, Sam Flowers, who is the author of that report, is struggling to get into this meeting. She's trying, but she's just getting blocked for some reason.
That's who it is. They haven't told me who they are in the meeting, so I can't let them in.
Right.
That's fine. I'll pop them through now.
Okay, thank you. Just while we're there, Albert, welcome. Albert Gardner has also joined as well, so thank you. Vic, there's one about to bring publication of the decision around primary place planning to the next forum meeting.
Yep, so we're happy to cover that. My colleague Sue Coombs, who is head of our school partnership team has been leading this piece of work. So I think Sue's got 2 or 3 slides, hopefully, if it allows us to share, to take us through.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Yep, that's good. You can see that, Sue. Oh, if you're speaking, Sue, I can't hear you.
Do you want me to talk through, or Sue, would you like to cover?
You can. I'm happy for you to talk through, Vic, if all I'm cover through.
Brilliant. Yeah, so we have been through a process over the last few months and leading on from the autumn to think about the published admissions number for this year. We've shared at this forum that there is a citywide gap in terms of the number of places available and actually the number of children that are entering the school system. So if we just go back one step, sorry, Sue. So when we talk about PAN reductions, so published admissions number reductions, these are in the multiples of 30, which is a class in a mainstream school. And when we talk about that PAN reduction, what we're describing is a reduction in a form of entry. And the approach that we have tried to take through the work that we've been doing now and will continue to take going into the future has been to ensure that we minimise the effect on smaller schools and that we avoid school closure where possible, but also work with some of the larger form of entry schools where perhaps they have 3 or 4 forms of entry to seek reductions there where we know that there is a reduction in the birth rate particularly, which is the main driver of the reduction in PAN. So the consultations we ran, so we just go on one slide, the consultations we ran in the autumn were to take effect for the 26-27 academic year, so next year. So there's always a lag about 18 months from when the consultation starts to when that takes effect in admissions, and particularly we've been focused on primary school numbers. But over time, as we know, these numbers will follow through into secondary, and we need to have a view towards that. So there are several key reasons, and these are hitting cities across the country, including London and other cities as well. But the primary factor, as I said, is declining birth rates. And obviously that can cause challenges for schools in terms of financial stability, where they don't have a full form of entry, which attracts their funding. Their funding follows pupils and allows them to both remain financially stable, but also offer a broad and balanced curriculum as well. So we as a local authority have a role to determine, using our demographic forecast, the sufficiency across the city, but we also and whilst we are the admissions authority for maintained schools, academy trusts are the admissions authorities for their own schools. So it's about a system-wide piece where we're working together to look at the balance of PAN across the city and how we reduce that as a whole system. So if we step on a slide. So we ran consultations in the autumn for a statutory period and determined that there were 6 schools in total, 4 of which are academies with the Trust in Learning Academy Trust, Oasis, so 2 with the Oasis Trust and 1 with Cathedral Trust, and also 2 maintained schools, which are Air Balloon Hill and Bishop Road, where there is a reduction in the form of entry for each of those. So that consultation ran, was generally positive and supportive of the reduction and understanding of the reasons why, and determined, which is the language you see there, means that has now fed into the admissions policy, which was published on the 15th of March, which is available on the council website, and we publish every year around that time. So that takes us through this year. As we kind of look forward to future years, we're continuing to work with our trusts and with the maintained schools to look at a longer term strategy. So that got us through 26/7. The aim is by the end of the summer term, we publish a broader place planning strategy or school organisation strategy, which will determine the principles and the approach that we will be taking to reduce pan across the city, and the aim would then be that will inform what we do over the next 3 or 4 years to ensure that we don't end up with an oversupply of places, both in primary, which has been a key focus for the city, but also as we start thinking about those young people who are growing up into secondary as well. So, so the key action for us is that we will be publishing a school organisation strategy around July, and that will go off to our Children and Young People's Committee in August, ready to start that process again in the autumn for the 27-28 academic years and beyond. Happy to take questions because I appreciate that the world of place planning is quite complex in terms of what our colleagues do, but I know it has been a source of discussion here.
Okay, thank you, Vic. That's really helpful having those slides and that briefing. Murch?
Yeah, I just wanted to the underlying principles that you have about minimising the effect of small schools and targeting larger schools. It seems to me that one of the reasons that larger schools may be able to deal better with special educational needs and these sorts of issues when you have more forms around, and about quality of education. And are these going to be feeding into the new strategy as well?
Sorry, Much. What was the question exactly?
So what I'm saying that the two ideas you have about minimising the effects on smaller schools and targeting larger schools for reductions, I'm just questioning whether there shouldn't also be something that takes into account the quality of the education in schools, and so not reducing so much in schools which have got that are effective in dealing with that have good Ofsted or whatever the measures you want to have, rather than just keep some smaller schools which maybe are not as robust to other factors.
Yeah, so there's a bit of an art and a science when our colleagues are looking at place planning. So we have the empirical data that gives us a sense of birth rates in a particular ward, and those population changes that are happening in a ward. So our colleagues are able to see that on a fairly small scale in a particular postcode in Bristol, for example, as to where there might be a reduction, and then start to think about how does that filter into school places. We can also see data on first choices, so first preferences and second preferences when schools are going, and that's any day now. I mean, we'll have just published primary, secondary is coming, I think, so we can start to see how those applications are looking to a fairly accurate level. And our colleague, that's the scientific part of it, I suppose, in that we can see where there is a reduction and where schools might be effective. The bit that's more kind of on the more challenging space is parental preference, which is harder to quantify. So whilst we can see first and second preferences historically, and going, what you can't see is that for next year, the year after that. So we have to factor some of that into our thinking. And that's where the consultation exercise is really key. The reductions we've made so far have been in consultation with the head teachers of those schools, and where they've given that consent as well. So this isn't a local authority imposing a decision on schools at all. This is very much a collaborative effort where schools can see that they're seeing a reduction in demand for school places in their area, and also wanting to support the wider system in terms of helping some of our smaller schools to remain viable as well, which is key in particular communities where it might be, despite Bristol not being a huge geographical area, it may be a significant distance for some children. So it's about balancing the system overall. And as you'll see in some of the data, one of the schools has 4 forms of entry and is moving to 3, so it remains a large school. It's not a small primary. A 4-form entry school, primary school is very large, and we'll still be able to sustainably offer a really good education to those children.
Mary?
I have a query about, and it is about one of the diocesan schools, but I'm sure it's not peculiar to them, the great amount of in-year movement that comes on the back of refugees in the city. Is there a plan around allowing there to be enough flexibility to continue to do that good work? The school concerned would otherwise be very, very small, but to lose it would mean we'd lose that very significant contribution to the education landscape.
Yeah, so we always allow for a small surplus of places for in-year admissions, or where there might be an unusual spike in demand for a particular school. So when we talk about the level of capacity the a ward or a group of schools in an area might have, and how that's been reducing to what the true admissions are, what we don't seek to do is so, for example, if there was an oversupply of 800 places, we don't seek to take 800 out. There's always a balance around ensuring that we still build in some flexibility in that, because whilst the figures are quite accurate, and to be fair, actually the good work of our place planning team, they were almost on the nose actually of first preference, second preference, using the modelling that they use. You have to allow for unusual events where there might be an increase in capacity. In terms of supporting asylum-seeking children or refugees, they're relatively small numbers, so they're usually quite straightforward for us to accommodate in-year admissions as well. So it shouldn't have an adverse effect on our ability to support those children either. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mary, but happy to elaborate if helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. I don't know, Vic, at some time in the future, and I've no idea when, maybe you want to come back and update us or something.
Yeah, I think happy to. It's definitely a useful conversation because it affects the finances, of course, and so it will affect the budget position for schools. We are likely to take our school organisation strategy to Children and Young People Committee in August, so it may be in September we can come and share that with you, and it'd be great for colleagues around this table to be part of the task and finish group. One of the things we're really keen on is that there are members that represent schools, particularly school leaders, that are part of that task and finish group, working on the place planning work with us. And we've been transparent with that group around seeing that data and informing the approach we're taking. And that will also move into some locality meetings with specific groups of schools where we think that there's that need. So maybe September's a good time for us to bring an update, and in the interim, if there are significant developments, we can share those here. That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going back to the actions, the insurance document. I think that was done. There was the revised meeting dates, which I think has largely been done, and we should be better aligned.
Yeah, we've done that. I've sent that out to everyone, so you should have any meeting dates, but I'm happy to send a separate email with that in if you want me to.
Okay, no, I think that's fine. And just reminded, Lauren, when we're likely to send out meeting dates for the following year.
Well, we're going to meet with officers, and then I'll send them out to you as soon as I know. I can't remember what date we've got that, but I will let you know as soon as we can.
Right, fine. Next one, we've got a finance. It's around revising the report format to highlight trends.
That's included in the report you've got on the next item.
Yep, seen that. Thank you, Steve. There's something about early years forum representatives meeting with Vic. I think that's outside of this meeting. So is that a sort of closed action or an agreed action?
I think that's a closed action. Yeah, we've been meeting with our early years forum. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And the last one was around the copyright fact sheet. So I think that one's done. Any more on any of those? just to say thank you, everybody. Thank you for having the action tracker. That's very helpful, and thank you, everybody who's been progressing those actions and giving helpful updates. So that's really great. I think we're going to move on to two substantive elements now, which are agenda items 4 and then 5. And the first one is the dedicated school grant budget monitoring for period 10.
Okay, that one's with me, Chair. Do people want me to share the screen if that's easier with the report? Or yep, okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay, presumably you can see this report now. So this is the agenda item for dedicated schools grant position as at period 10 up until the end of January 2025. Just to note, there was no formal reporting at period 11, which covered the period to the end of February, and we're now in the midst of the year-end requirements, so we can bring the final outturn at period 12 position to you at the next meeting of Forum. In terms of the dedicated schools grant, the allocation, as we've mentioned previously, does fluctuate during the year for in-year adjustments, whether it's academy recoupment or high needs changes. And there was an adjustment in January of 387,000, which was a combination of factors across the early years block, the central school services block, and the high needs import-export adjustments. So that's brought our gross dedicated schools grant to 491.7 million. That will be subject to change again with any final allocations notified up to the 31st of March. Again, that will be in the report that we bring to you in for the final outturn. The position at the moment, up until period 10, is that we're recording an in-year overspend of 33 million. We've still got the contributions from the safety valve and Bristol City Council contribution. So the net in-year overspend is 17.6 million rounded. In terms of the breakdown of that across the relevant blocks, you can see here the variances which accumulate to the 33 million. As always, the usual hotspot is on the high needs block, and we'll come on to the reasons for that shortly. Again, the net in-year deficit is 17.6 million once the contributions are factored in. Predominantly a high needs block, the overspend is due to the increasing volume and severity of needs requiring additional costs for education, health and care plans. We've got the number of and volume of children being educated in external, independent, non-maintained specialist provision, which is very high cost, which is due to the lack of local provision, which is part of capital strategy and interventions to try to develop that local provision and then ultimately stem the flow of children going into those higher cost placements. We've shown the movement from the period 7 report that was due to those increasing volumes of activities that I've mentioned. We've got increasing payments for nursery cohorts with the top-ups required there, and the costs of personal budgets and the cost of educating children other than at school, that EOTUS cohort there. Central School Services block is overspending slightly due to the cost pressures of the copyright licensing and some agency staff costs supporting Central School Services. And the schools block and the high needs block are always forecast to zero because that goes out 100% to those sectors there. This is the detailed table that we've added following previous conversations at Forum around tracking the movements of the deficit over the months. So we started this in period 3, and you can see the movements going across. It's quite detailed, this table, but it's basically the table from period 10, but then we've got that for every month added. So you can see over the year, the deficit has increased by around 4 million, 4.5 million, and that's because of those volumes, including clearing backlogs. So some of the costs should have appeared in previous years, but delays in the system have meant that this year the SEN teams are clearing those backlogs, and then we've got the costs that are coming through into the 24-25 accounts. I've also done a couple of charts, so you can see it in that presentation there, just to track on a line graph how that movement has increased in terms of the gross deficit and then the net deficit once those contributions are factored in. And then this is the cumulative, including the balance brought forward from the previous year. So that's the position as it stands at period 10. We will update this, as I've said, for final outturn. There's lots of activity going on over the next couple of weeks, making sure we've got all the invoices accounted for in the right year and all the year-end entries made, and then we can bring that to the next meeting of forum in June. I'm happy to take any questions there if anybody has any on this particular paper.
Thank you for that.
I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see people. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Stephen, and thank you for the additional tables and graphs to help our understanding. Appreciate that. Louise?
Thank you, Chair. If I could ask a question, please, Steve, and it might be because it's my first forum meeting that I don't know the answer to this, so apologies. You talked in your report about the overspend being mainly related to non-maintained placements. I wonder whether you could give me a bit more information about, is it all to do with that, or is that just the most significant element, and things like EOTUS and top-up funding in maintained schools and academies is also part of the equation, and sort of what proportion that is?
I've not got the proportions to hand, but it is a combination, as you'll be familiar with, Louise, from your local authority days. So it's a combination of the high cost independent non-maintained special school placements together with volumes of our own special needs placements within our maintained provision and academy provisions within Bristol. So we've got high volumes of education, health and care plans in all of our schools. Very high, severity of needs requiring the, significant top-ups. We've got the personal budgets, as we've mentioned, and the EOTUS. So it's an overall combination. It's not just related to the external independent placements, but that is by far the most significant factor.
Thank you.
Mitch?
Just a query about the plan that we're in. I've just lost the word for it.
The safety valve, the
safety valve, because there was some speculation in the press, I think, that may have been changed or pulled, but at the moment, your expectations that will continue through to 29/30. Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, yes, unless Vic or Guy have any other information on that.
Yeah, no change. The only related bit of press that you may have picked up is the government announced that there'll be no new safety valve agreements, but that doesn't affect existing, which is a slightly different matter and doesn't affect Bristol at this point.
Sorry, I'm on mute.
Oh, that's fine, Steve. So I was just checking you were still there.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, so I was having a conversation with myself. Right. So, any further comments or questions? We have got agenda item 5, and I think that will probably go into some of the detail, even more detail than some of the key points on 4. So. No, thank you, and note the improved format, and note that at the next meeting we'll have the sort of end of year summaries, so that's helpful. Okay, if we can go on to agenda item 5, which is the DSG management plan update, and that provides lots of really useful context and background of where we are on a number of important things. So not quite sure who's going to lead on that, is it?
I'm going to step in to do that, Steve. Samantha Flowers on the screen here. Apologies for my late arrival. I couldn't get in on my work laptop, so I've dialed in on my home one. I can't have access to any. I don't have access to the report to share. I can speak to the report, but I don't know if you want to go through. If somebody wants to put the report up on the screen, I don't know if Lauren can do that, or perhaps
Give me
Stephen
1
can.
minute.
Thank you.
It's all right. I've just got to work out what I'm doing.
Fine. And then I'll talk to the headlines that are in there, assuming obviously that everyone's had a chance to read the report. So this report, so our DSG management plan update report speaks to period 8 as our draft position at that stage. And it gives our draft projections for to the end of the safety valve agreement date of the 31st of March 2020. It's different. The process of validating the deficit management plan is a complex financial and narrative piece of work, and our finance colleagues, I think it's a 21-step process to do that validation. So that's why it's not done routinely at month end. I know I've got Guy Marshall here in the room who can speak to more of that detail if colleagues do want to know, but that's why they don't track aligned. And we have actually we're just about to return our next validated position based on period 10, but that has to go to the DFE. It's due in tomorrow on Tuesday, the 2nd of April. It's the first of our tri-annual returns for 2025-26, but they are the first recipients of that. So yeah, there's a few kind of dates in play at the moment. So our draft 8 position predicts an adverse movement to that which was agreed with the DFE, and that's also aligns to the report that you've seen from Stephen this afternoon. Our primary delivery vehicle for implementing changes and mitigations is through the Bristol Send and Inclusion Strategy and the underlying delivery plan that supports that strategy. And the governance is managed through our Send and AP Delivery Board, which is chaired by Vic as our Director of Education. And then that's overseen by our Send and AP Executive Board, which has an independent chair. And there is a diagram of the governance arrangements within the report, and you'll see that Bristol Schools Forum is in there as well. So we do have robust oversight and governance of this work through the authority and beyond. Hold on, just lost my screen, trying to manage 2 logins here. I think in terms of our positive drivers, as we say, we've got our real cornerstones of our change, our overarching change piece in place now. We've got our Send and Inclusion Strategy, our co-production charter, and our memorandum of understanding. These products have been developed over a period of time in collaboration with all stakeholders, and then they were formally launched at our Children and Young People's Committee by young people themselves earlier in the year, which was really exciting and a pleasure to see. We've launched our Send placemaking service, which is charged with delivering 95 of those new specialist provision places by September 2025. We've got high confidence level of about 80 of those places, and we're working really hard to increase the confidence levels on the remaining 15 places, closely linked, but not entirely dependent on our Education Capital programme. So yes, some strong links there. We've got a newly formed Send practice team who are working in a relational way with families who have indicated they would like their child to transition back to mainstream or specialist school in Bristol. And we've also seen the launch of our Send support tool, which is a new online resource designed to help SENCOs identify needs and provision. And the tool can be used to submit a request to the Early Intervention Fund grant if appropriate. We also saw the formal end of the Send Accelerated Progress Plan in November 2024, following a review by the Department for Education. So those are our main identified positive drivers, and as we reported those to the DFE in our last monitoring return. In terms of our sort of challenges or barriers, We're continuing to see an increase in requests for education, health and care needs assessments, and some of those are linked to the decision to withdraw non-statutory funding, which was taken last year. That's working its way through the system now. As Steve said, our use of independent non-maintained schools continues to increase. That's in line with our demand and current local sufficiency challenges, while our education capital programme gears up to respond. So, those two things need to align. And I think, the one thing we've talked about data integrity and quality, and this being a challenge for us in terms of really knowing ourselves and predicting our future need. But we've seen some really significant progress in this space over the last 6 months. We're not where we need to be, but we know what we need to do. And I think, that's we've got a data dashboard, which is really helping us spotlight and zoom in on areas where we can actually fix those data quality issues. So our barriers are known, and we have plans in place to mitigate. In terms of a summary of the financial position, and as I say, Guy Marshall is here if there are any questions relating to this. The period 8 projected a deficit of 53.1 million for 31st of March 2025, which is adverse to that agreed with the DfE by 15.1 million. By 29/30, the period 8 projected a deficit of 46.3 million at the 31st of March 2030. The agreed deficit at this date is 0. So we've got some bridging the gap work to do there. 70% of our savings is linked to our increase in specialist provision programme. So I think some of that is due to the slippage there. So we'll be looking wherever possible to accelerate and expedite those projects to start to bring us back online and restabilise those forecasts. So the thing about the far away forecasts is that they are really far away. So there is time to recalibrate, but it is a challenge. So I think that's there's something that it focuses minds, I think, to know what the current projection is. So I think just in terms of that summary, we've got our cornerstones in place with our strategy and plan, with our governance, that we've seen the end of the accelerated action plan, and we've got our permanent leadership structure in place now. So we're just starting our full second year, and some way to go yet. So I will hand back over to the chair to field the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. It's really helpful. It's helpful to see those progress in the cornerstones, the strategy, the organisation, the governance, the consultation, and the progress. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure we will have questions, and first is Esther.
Hello, thanks, Samantha. My question was, well, I've got two, but the first one about the early intervention fund. Senko's had found that the SEND support tool took quite a lot of time to complete. It was heavy on demand of time. And therefore, I know that there was question about how useful it was going to be, because the money that you could receive after completing that wasn't quite as expected that we thought to begin with from Senko's. So I just wondered if we could know how many Senkos across the city have applied for the early intervention fund via the SEND support tool, and how many have been successful, because I know there's some challenge about how it could be completed. So how many have applied and how many have been successful?
That's a very specific question, so I'll need to go and check. I do have the figure somewhere in an email, but I don't have that in front of me at this time. We are going through. So first of all, I think the SEND support tool does take time to complete, because it tries to capture the different types of needs that children will have, which can can be for a multitude of reasons. So it is part of that kind of diagnostic tool, and it also should give schools a return as well that's useful for them in terms of a benchmark of how to assess need. It's been very positively received by the DfE, who want to use it as a model for other local authorities as well. They can see that the innovation that we've put into having that SEND support tool does create a really useful diagnostic for that SEND support cohort. So I think first and foremost, it's a really valuable tool. Yes, it does take time because every child's needs are going to be different and varying in complexity. It's in its first year, so there's £1 million that's been allocated to the fund, and that was as part of this pilot for this first year to see how we get on, how do schools experience it. If it's hugely successful and we start to see some really good positive early intervention taking effect, then there's no reason why we wouldn't want to come back to forum and suggest that we increase the pot further if it's doing exactly that. In terms of applications, I'll have to go back and check. I may find it by the end of the meeting, so I'll try and drop it in the chat for you, Esther.
Thank you. Could I ask my second question, Chair, or shall I wait?
No, jump in.
Thank you. The second question was about the in the report, 1,183 students, pupils in the city who are waiting in the system for the EHCPs to be published. And I realise the huge challenge in all areas there. And I know that they're prioritising, the priority is for children in care, and then for children who are out of the system of education at the moment, so not known to schools. But I wondered from experiences, again, from SENCOs, there are some students who are, have particular physical and sensory needs, which are inhibiting their access to learning, and where the school cannot cover those costs, that seems to be a real greater need. So I know that there are lots of different groups with that we could prioritise. All children are important, but I just wondered if there has been any thinking around looking at how we are prioritising those students who are waiting for EHCPs to be put through.
Yes, so that's right in that we are prioritising based on vulnerability and need, but also what we did announce, and hopefully Cathedral Schools Trust did get the letter as well, is that we will be extending the transitional period for children that are in receipt of top-up funding, which makes up the vast majority of those children in the backlog position at the moment. It's probably about 50%. So what we have agreed is that we will extend the top-up funding that those children were receiving. So some of those would have been coming to an end, for example, in July 25 or July of next year. We've extended that whilst they are having their assessments undertaken, so that there should be no withdrawal of top-up funding for those children. And that's where the team are having those discussions, because what we do have is two cohorts here. We have a cohort of children who are perhaps newer requests for EHCP that don't have additional funding from the high needs block to support, and then obviously children who are in receipt of top up, which ranges from what could be, a few £100s up to £25,000, where that transitional period will just continue while they're receiving that support. And then that doesn't detract, of course, from what schools receive in their notional budgets to support children in SEN support, because the Education, Health and Care Plan process is it's a 4 to 5 months, it's a 20-week process. It's a process that takes time to diagnose and understand the needs of that child. It doesn't detract from the work that schools would need to do in the lead up to that assessment and beyond through the graduated approach.
Did that answer the question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I in part, thank you. I understood that there were there was actually a greater number of students that aren't in receipt of top up that are actually now part of that 1,100. But I may be wrong in my figures there. But certainly from my experience, there's quite a lot of students that are waiting. I'm just wondering, in terms of that physical and sensory need, if that could be something that was considered, because that schools are finding that difficult. If a child has a significant physical need and they're not able to provide for that from the element 2 or the ordinary available provision, if that could be considered when we're looking at priorities. Thanks.
Yeah, I think happy to pick that up outside. I don't want to make a broad judgment without knowing the detail and context of those children that you might be describing.
Okay, I'm going to go over to Louise M.
Thank you very much. There was an announcement from the DfE last week about £740 million for 10,000 new SEN places, of which there was an allocation for Bristol of 3.8 million. And I just wanted to ask, is this just re-announcing the same money that you've already built into the programme, or is this really something that will enhance the programme that you were describing? Thank you.
Yes. So the 740 million was actually announced back in December, but what the government kind of re-announced, I suppose, was more guidance on how the funding can be used. So it does. There was a bit of excitement around, is there new money coming into the system? But obviously, it's clarification of existing money that's in the system. We're obviously disappointed to only get a small allocation given the level of need, but we know that that will have been distributed in a number of ways. I mean, just to give you an idea, to build a new specialist provision, could be anywhere, as you'll know, from 30 to 40 million. So 3.8 million is, whilst helpful, it is not anywhere near enough to make a significant dent in the level of investment that we have. So we have got a bigger program of 30 or 40 million ourselves, which is going to be part of our investment as a local authority, but also with the free schools programs. But yeah, I think 3.8 million isn't really enough for us to build a new school or do something really radical in that space. We will be bringing a paper which we could probably bring here at some point in terms of how we will be investing that 40 million that we've allocated. And I did write to the DfE, would have been last week, to ask for an update on the SEN free school, which has been much delayed. And again, we're seeking to support partners and the DfE in terms of pushing that along and making sure that that happens as well. So certainly sufficiency of specialist provision is an absolute priority for us, but sadly is a slow process as you try to invest capital.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I've got 4 questions which I'll throw in while doing that. Just sort of in the report, Sam, you were talking about the 95 additional places, and I think you said you'd got, well, the report says there's confidence in 80 of them, and then verbally you said you had confidence. No, the report says you've got confidence in 90 of them, and you said 80. Is there a change there, or was it just yeah, explain that, please.
Do you want me to take that, Vic, or do you want to step in?
Yeah, go ahead, Sam. That's fine.
Okay, so I think the thing is with our confidence levels, they do vary. We've got a really robust feedback link from our leads who are working in that side of the programme. So and things do change. It's capital, so I think and it's less about the number on any given day, but it's about the pipeline of projects that we've got that we can move in if something gets to a certain point and then for whatever reason looks to be unviable at that stage. So it is a moving figure. It's inconvenient, but it is one of the truths of where we're at. So for when I wrote the slide deck, it was 80. But yeah, it could be, I could meet with our lead tomorrow and it could be right back up to 95. So we're aggressively, I don't like the word aggressively, but we are aggressively looking to achieve that 95 by September. It's a real big milestone for us and a key deliverable.
Okay, I mean that's great, and achieving 80, 90, whatever is going to make a great difference. I guess my second question is, having achieved the 95, is that then the level, or is then further 95s to be achieved to be able to achieve the overall plan for 29-30?
So I Sam can probably answer as well, but there is a programme over the next 5 years, part of which is delivered by the DFE. So the DFE are delivering an SEM free school for Bristol alongside other schemes, and then we are investing as well. So the 95 is our target for this September, but we are tracking those targets over the next few years. So that is the plan. When I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about place planning, I referred to the school organisation strategy, which is about how do we make sure there are enough or not an oversupply of school places in primary and secondary schools in Bristol. Alongside that, we will be publishing a SEND sufficiency strategy that talks about the equivalent, but where, rather than an oversupply, where we feel that we require more places in terms of geographically, in terms of type of need, and then obviously the age range as well. Now, we've already been doing some of that work, so we have some of that data informing our capital strategy already. But what we want to do is more publicly publish the sufficiency strategy so that that's clear. And then obviously when we receive expressions of interest from schools, it aligns with the things that we're trying to do rather than, creating a more confusing picture. So that's what's informing the kind of where do we invest, what kind of provision do we invest in, likewise, how many places do we need over the next few years?
Okay, thank you. And I think that was my third question, which was sort of interaction between place planning and that, and maybe primary coming down, but interrelationship with SEND and
yeah. And what we, just on that, Steve, what we, or certainly I find myself in conversations with a number of schools on is, where they have surplus spaces in their classrooms because of that falling birth rate, because of a reduction in PAN, that they are thinking about the utilisation of that for specialist provision. What we're trying to do, though, is be more proactive so that we can make sure that aligns with our sufficiency strategy, rather than is just using up surplus place where that's available, because they might not always be in synergy.
Okay. Right, my last question, maybe because I saw the 7 ball at the weekend, I'm thinking about bow waves. So there's a sort of bow wave with the EHCPs because of the change in the top-ups, and I'm trying to get my head around it. Does that mean that the demand for EHCPs, we think, will now come up to a higher level, or is it because of the change in the top-ups that's going to be a bow wave and then it's going to settle down again? So yeah, that's the intangible question.
Yeah, no, brilliant question. It's something we've done a lot of analysis of. So in a nutshell, the change around top-up did produce this larger increase, so this 32-33% sustained increase that we saw last year. And we do think that the changes we've made around top-up to make sure that transitional funding continues will stabilise that, and will make sure that that cohort in the main continues to receive the funding that they need. If you isolate that cohort outside, if that change hadn't happened, we would be at the typical Southwest level for the increase in education, health and care plans. So we don't expect that Bristol's experiencing some unusual phenomenon where we are at seeing a 33% increase and most other authorities see 10%. We think this is more to do with what demand was being met through top up, and that once we complete the work on the backlog, that actually we'll get back to that kind of more typical to kind of national level, and that's where we've been scaling up further investment in education psychologists to support that. So we've put about £500,000 worth of additional investment there. We've just completed our restructure of the SEND service and are going through the recruitment process to build up capacity in the SEND service as well, again to support that high need. The other bit to mention, I think it might be in the report, is that Bristol typically, so slightly bucked the trend of national in that we had a larger than average SEN support cohort, but a smaller than average EHCP cohort. So the top-up funding probably explains the differential, because I think when you then look at the two figures together, it pretty much puts you back at average. So on the other side of the increase that we're experiencing at the moment, we expect we'll also have a more typical level of education, health and care plans meeting national average, and likewise on SEN support, that number will come down a bit. So I suppose you could call this a bit of a reset process where we're getting back to, to that process. The point around changing top up, I think, we have now made the changes that we need to, but it has been challenging. It has put more pressure on the SEND service, and that's why we've taken the approach to mitigate it in the way that we have when we wrote out schools.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'm also interested in feedback either now or later if forum members found it helpful to have this report. Okay, I can see nodding around the room. I think, okay, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Vic. Lauren, I think we're in any other business.
Had none brought to my attention.
Okay. Right. Oh, there we go, Stephen.
Thanks, Steve. Just two things. The DfE issued an update to the scheme for financing schools on Friday, and it's only a one-line change, but I do have to go out to consult with the maintained sector. So I'm just letting colleagues know that a consultation will come out shortly, just to update the scheme, which we updated last year. And there'll be an update to the number of schools that are maintained as well, because we've had 5 schools that I've converted over the last 12 months or so as well. So that will come out shortly. The second thing was some good news for our early years sector, in that we've just been awarded 724,000 as part of the early years expansion grant to target the expansion to support 2s and under 2s in early years provisions. An email has gone out to all early years providers last week on the 26th, and then further details will go out to all providers after the Easter break from the early years team. So if early years colleagues, hopefully you've seen that.
Okay, got Kate.
Thank you. Thanks. So is that for 2s as well as under 2s?
2s and under 2s, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen, just while you're there, ESFA being folded into DfE, I think that doesn't have any impact.
None at all that I'm expecting. It actually disbanded today, so everything that the ESFA did is now under the Department for Education, and the ESFA officially doesn't exist anymore. Although it's exactly the same people, the same services, the same emails, they're just now under the DfE umbrella. They don't have the separate quango of the ESFA anymore. So I don't expect any changes or any impacts to anybody that used to contact the ESFA. It's business as usual.
Okay, thank you everybody for producing the papers. Thank you everybody for attending.
Just let you know that the next meeting will be the 3rd of June.
Okay, get it in your diaries now. All right, thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye.